What you're about to watch are the 5 reasons you need an AR-15 that I did in conjunction with the USCCA. And the USCCA has a gun giveaway going on right now where you can enter for free. Click the link below to learn more. Anytime you have a conversation about guns in this country, this question will inevitably come up. Why does anyone need an AR-15? Most people who ask this question are asking this question honestly. However, everyone else who asks this question are asking the question dishonestly because they know the Second Amendment is part of the Bill of Rights and not the Bill of Needs. So they know there isn't a need requirement for which gun you can use under the Second Amendment. That said, this question comes up pretty often. So for the people who are genuinely asking the question, why do you need an AR-15? I'm going to give you 5 reasons. You need an AR-15 to defend against break-ins with multiple suspects. If you knew that 4 guys with guns were going to break into your home or business and try to brutally murder you and your family, which gun would you pick to defend yourself? A handgun or an AR-15? If you said the handgun, you're a liar. If you said the AR-15, you just made my point. The AR-15 is the best gun to use against multiple armed intruders who are trying to kill you.
There is a pistol on the counter, but when the store owner saw what was developing outside, he went to the back room for a rifle.
I saw guys outside with guns and they were wearing hoodies and summertime. And that's where it started.
It's about 4 a.m. A stolen minivan charges into the reinforced front door.
Someone driving a minivan, 3 guys charges to the door. So, you know, it was a lot of guys out there, like I said. So I believe that if they would have gone through the door, I would have been dead.
Muir fired several rounds at intruders trying to break into the store.
When it comes to dealing with multiple suspects, the AR-15 hands down is the equalizer.
He, any of those people can punch me once, I'm going to be lights out. But if I can defend myself and give me distance and time, then I have a fighting chance to live past today.
The AR-15 is such an equalizer. A woman with an AR can take on 2 men with handguns.
One of the men started pistol whipping him while another kicked him repeatedly in the head. King's wife, who was 8 months pregnant, was in the back bedroom and peeked out to see what was going on. That's when King says one of the masked men shot at her. She retreated, grabbed an AR-15 and returned fire.
When he came towards the back door in her line of sight, she clipped him. He made it from my back door roughly 200 feet out in the front ditch before the AR did its thing.
Teens tear down the back door, only to discover mom is on the other side, locked and loaded. Her husband, thankful he gave his wife this assault rifle just 2 weeks ago after a different break-in attempt.
During a home invasion with multiple suspects, you're already at a huge disadvantage. You don't get days to plan for it. You don't even get a few minutes. You only get seconds to react to people trying to kill you, but these scumbags get days or even weeks to plan ahead of time. Handguns are a compromise. Yes, they're easy to carry, but they're largely underpowered and much harder to shoot accurately compared to AR-15s. Shotguns have the stopping power but lack the capacity. This is fine if the people trying to kill you run away once you start shooting, but if they stay and fight, you're screwed. That's where the AR-15 comes in. AR-15s are easier to shoot accurately, they have a higher capacity, and have much lower recoil. An AR-15 is exceedingly easier to suppress than a shotgun, so you have the added advantage of protecting your hearing. All of these factors immediately put you on an equal playing field with the scumbags who are now trying to kill you. Long story short, all of the benefits that people like to say an AR-15 gives to criminals also gives to law-abiding citizens. Honestly, I could end the video right there, but let's keep going. You need an AR-15 to defend yourself during civil unrest. In 2020, there was a city dealing with riots and pure chaos almost every other week. At this point, everyone should realize that in an instant, things can go from this to this. And when this happens, you can't rely on the police because they're too busy trying to deal with the chaos.
Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw said police did not have organized teams or the resources to respond to every neighborhood.
Federal agents were, quote, unprepared to communicate with other officers on the ground there to protect federal buildings. The report also finds that the department did not have a comprehensive strategy in place when it deployed agents to the city at the height of the protest.
During civil unrest, you're dealing with a mob mentality. In mobs, people do things they normally wouldn't do. And you're not only dealing with a couple of people, you're dealing with a mob of people. If at any point the mob decides to get violent and you're in the path of that violent mob, trust me, whether it's a left-wing mob or a right-wing mob or a center-wing mob, at any point, you can be on the wrong side of the mob. And if that mob decides to come your direction, you're gonna need an AR-15 for protection. A handgun or a shotgun won't cut it. Handguns don't intimidate a mob, and shotguns have too much recoil and not enough capacity, and it's a lot harder to shoot consistently because of the recoil compared to an AR-15. I also can't think of a better deterrent during civil unrest than a group of people with AR-15 standing guard protecting a business, neighborhood, or even your home.
Hector Fuentes took a different approach. He fully armed himself and stood guard all night.
What kind of weapons did you have?
We had AK-47s, AR-15s, we had...
Owners and employees for a few other shops in Kensington Avenue also had full artilleries. They say police told them they had the right to defend themselves.
Police was overwhelmed. They couldn't get out in time.
Residents were armed with assault rifles and baseball bats. In the Italian market, we saw armed security that's been hired to patrol.
When you're dealing with a violent mob, the only thing they will respect is the real ability to adequately protect yourself. And that's why you need an AR-15. Let's keep going. You need an AR-15 to protect yourself during a natural disaster or a shit hit the fan scenario. Natural disasters can happen at any moment and happen way more frequently than civil unrest and have a tendency to last longer. After a natural disaster, whether you like it or not, you're on your own. If it's a bad enough or long enough situation, you'll likely be living in a lawless environment. And criminals love this because people become easy targets. If you live in a rural area during a natural disaster or a shit hit the fan situation, and you live on acres, a handgun isn't enough to protect your property. It's not just humans you have to worry about. It's dangerous animals too. When dangerous animals' natural habitats get destroyed during a natural disaster, they'll start moving into civilization, and you're gonna need the versatility, power, and range of the AR platform to protect yourself against dangerous animals and people on your property. If you live in the city, you might have to go find things like food, medicine, different shelter, lost loved ones, you name it. You might have to do this by walking because there's too much debris on the road. You don't know what you're gonna encounter. You don't know how many people are out there looking to take advantage of the situation. Can you imagine how dangerous it'll be at night with no power and pitch black darkness and no police to help you, and there are criminals rampaging through the city looking to take what little you have, but you have to go out and find a loved one or get emergency supplies? You want the best thing possible to protect yourself in that environment when you have to go out and do these things because the police can't help you. And that is why you need an AR-15.
With the police department crippled, these people amassed weapons and began patrolling the streets. Before long, bullets began to fly.
They're doing looting. They're looting the businesses right now, and we figure they'll eventually get around to looting the houses.
You need an AR-15 because everyone else has them, including criminals. There are at bare minimum 20 million ARs in this country. You may not have an AR, but other people do. So ask yourself, do you really want to be the only person without an AR-15 when you're surrounded by police and criminals that do? Criminals by definition don't follow laws, and as a result, criminals have all the guns they're not supposed to have, like the AR-15. It's a simple concept. If the criminals have AR-15s, even though they're not supposed to, and if you're going to adequately protect yourself from those criminals, you also need an AR-15. During the infamous North Hollywood shootout, the police were so outgunned by two criminals, they had to go to a gun store to get AR-15s to fight back against just two dudes.
Some of our gang officers and our detectives went to B&B Guns Code 3.
One officer at a gun store getting several AR-15s for the unit.
The cops borrow several assault rifles with .223 caliber ammo.
The police had to go to civilians to get guns because their handguns weren't powerful enough. If you think all you need is a handgun because criminals have handguns, then logic dictates that if the criminals also have AR-15s, which they do, you also need an AR-15. If it makes sense for handguns, it makes sense for AR-15s. Why would you want the fight for your life to be an uneven match? I want what the criminal is trying to use against me or better. So if criminals have AR-15s that they could possibly use against you, then you need an AR-15 so that you can fight back against them. This is not rocket science. You need an AR-15 because you don't trust the government. A study from the Pew Research Center found that only 2 in 10 Americans say they trust the government in Washington to do what is right. just about always 2% of the time, or most of the time, 19% of the time. Trust in the government has declined somewhat since last year when 24% said they could trust the government at least most of the time. The study also found that only 29% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents say they trust the government just about always or most of the time, which is odd considering the people who ask why do you need an AR-15 are typically, if not always, Democrat or Democratic-leaning independents. If the vast majority of Americans don't trust the government, why would you leave yourself defenseless to the same government you don't trust? I think it's pretty clear that the people need one of the most effective weapons as a deterrent to the government they say they don't trust and could possibly turn tyrannical. The founding fathers used their own rifles to win the Revolutionary War against a tyrannical government. They then wrote the Second Amendment to protect the people's right to keep and bear arms so that the people of the future could use their own rifles like they just did to either be a deterrent to a tyrannical government or to fight back against a tyrannical government, foreign or domestic. The most effective tool to do this right now that is available to the people is the AR-15. Truth be told, the Second Amendment said arms, not just AR-15s. So we should have access to more than just AR-15s. And for all the people who think that our government could never turn tyrannical, I leave you with the words of a former judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, Alex Kaczynski, as to why the AR-15 in the hands of the people is necessary to deter and or fight back against a tyrannical government. And he says, and I quote, "However improbable these contingencies may seem today, facing them unprepared is a mistake a free people get to make only once." Truth be told, there are a lot of other reasons you need an AR-15, but the 5 that I listed are the most important because all 5 reasons revolve around the idea of protecting not only yourself, but your family and the people you care about. That said, regardless of the situation, you'll be held legally accountable if any of these situations you decide to use your gun in self-defense. That's why having the knowledge about firearm ownership, the training to use your gun effectively, and making sure you're prepared legally is of the utmost importance. That's why I'm a USCCA member. It's breathtakingly easy to cover all of my bases legally. If I ever have to use my gun in self-defense, I could find myself in a very expensive legal case to prove that me using my gun was justified. You also get access to their treasure trove of education and their training program. So if you're interested in learning more about USCCA, there was a link in the description section of this video.
Want to know when it's legal to draw your gun? Click the video right next to me to reveal a detailed explanation from a former police officer and competitive shooter.